environmentalists have often gone back to Genesis 1 and misinterpreted that, subdue the earth, meaning you can exploit it, that you can do whatever you want with it. And you have no reason to respect nature. Well, that's insane, because in the scripture, it's clearly God is giving human beings stewardship. It's a delegated authority. They're not free to do whatever they want with nature. They're responsible to the creator who gave them this responsibility. If you look at the language, if you unpack the Hebrew words there, it talks about nurturing and caring for, taking care of nature, treating it like a garden, right, that you cultivate. And so the language there, if you go back to the original Hebrew, has nothing to do with humans just pillaging the earth. But the reason it's been misunderstood is because as Western culture secularized, then secular people, again, took secular meanings and infused them into that language. And is particularly social Darwinists, who basically said, we're at the top of the heap. We're at the top of the evolutionary ladder. We have the right to do whatever we want with nature. So the people who were really pillaging the earth historically, the robber barons of the 19th century, were not Christian. They were social Darwinists. In fact, interestingly enough, Darwinism even had an impact on secular views of masculinity. Most people don't realize that because they think of Darwinism as a scientific theory. But the Darwinian writers of the 19th century immediately began applying it to masculinity, began to say things like, the men who came out on top in the struggle for survival would be men who were ruthless, savage, barbarian, brutal, and predatory. I'm using their language. This is the language of Herbert Spencer, for example, who is one of the main popularizers of Darwin's theory. So instead of urging men to live up to the image of God in them, Darwinist writers began to urge them to live down to their presumed animal nature, to the beast within. That was their favorite word. And by the way, that social Darwinism has come back. It's now called evolutionary psychology, but it's very popular in some circles. There was a best-selling book by an evolutionary psychologist, and the title was The Moral Animal. And in the book, he says, the human male is a possessive, oppressive, flesh-obsessed pig. Giving a man a book on how to have a better marriage is like giving a Viking a book on how not to pillage. And I read this, I thought, he can get away with demeaning men like this. But there's another one too. It's an older book that was just reissued by George Gilder. And he too says, men are by nature violent, irresponsible, sexually predatory. Their greatest yearning is to escape, right? Escape civilization, escape the impact of women, and into what he calls, and this is direct quote, a primal mode of predatory and immediate gratification. And so this is the view coming out of a secular view, a Darwinian view of human nature. If you want to know what I mean when I say we want a biblical view versus a secular view, this is a secular view right now. This is what's producing the Andrew Tates of the world. So Andrew Tate, for the few people who may not know who he is still, he's very popular with young men right now. And it's kind of the fast cars, fast money, fast women paradigm. And he was recently arrested in Romania on sex trafficking charges. But he openly says, I'm a pimp. And what I do is I produce pornography. That's how I've made my money. And then he turns around and tells young men they should go out and make money like he does. I was talking to a former student of mine, a graduate student, who now teaches at a high school. And she said, all of my male students are fans of Andrew Tate. They use Andrew Tate quotes in the yearbook. I said, where do you teach? At a classical Christian school. So it's permeated every area of society. Even Christian kids are saying, looking up to the Andrew Tates of the world, because they're reaching out for models of masculinity. And if we don't give them healthy models, they will be drawn to models like Andrew Tate. And there's a new one too. The New York Post called him the new Andrew Tate. His name is Myron Gaines. And his tagline is, I turn men from simps into pimps. And he's becoming popular too. He's got millions of people on his, his Twitter page. So there's it's almost like we're seeing a reaction against, you talked earlier about, the feminist denigration of the male character. Now we're seeing almost a reverse where men are saying, well, yeah, we are lewd, rude, and crude, and that's just the male character, and women have to accept it. Both Andrew Tate and Myron Gaines, for example, say men are naturally sexually promiscuous. You can't rein that in. It's impossible. It's their true nature. And women just have to learn to accept that. And if they want to be with a man like that, they just have to accept he's going to have other women on the side. So that's where the debate is today, is, Andrew Tate is becoming sort of the model for many young men.